What's up guys, Coach Az here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the hook kick. For any of you that were wondering, my martial arts journey began with karate, Wado-ryu karate in particular, and then I went on to some freestyle kickboxing which included points fighting, light continuous, low kick, etc. Later on, I gained a big interest in Muay Thai, K1 and MMA, so I included a lot more of that in my training. And during that transition period from one to the other, one of the stark differences that I noticed was the inclusion or exclusion of the hook kick. The hook kick involves bringing your leg up and around and attacking with either the heel or the sole of the foot to the side of your opponent's head. You can think of it from that chambered position of drawing a C shape from the bottom to the top at the point of impact. A key part to the technique is whipping at your knee at that point where you strike to develop the maximum amount of speed and power. In karate, this is one of the fundamental techniques you'll learn. You'll learn it very early on and plenty of variations as you go on with your training. However, with Muay Thai, you only need to look at the shin pads to know that they don't really encourage or train you to throw this strike very often. In the majority of Muay Thai and K1 gyms that I've trained in, when I've asked about this technique, they've often told me that they don't believe that it's an effective strike to land in a fight. It's the reason why the majority of the time, the only techniques they'll ever include in terms of kicks are going to be your teep or your front kick and your roundhouse kick. But I must say that through the rise of MMA in particular, where we've seen so many different styles of martial artists come up into the limelight, I have seen a few applications for the hook kick where I do believe it can be an effective strike. There are two main issues with throwing a hook kick. One, it's a bit more difficult to land, especially if it does make contact with a target, and that includes if it hits onto the guard. You'll experience this if you kick a bag with it. It's a bit more difficult to find where to put your foot back down after landing the technique. Secondly, and the most common problem that people bring up, is that it's not the most powerful kick that you can throw. For example, if I took a complete beginner and I gave them 30 minutes to work on a roundhouse kick and 30 minutes to work on a hook kick, and at the end I was going to assess which technique they could throw with more proficiency and more power, I'd say that 9 times out of 10, the roundhouse kick would be a better developed technique within that time. The mechanics of it are more simple, and it requires far less flexibility and mobility in order to execute it effectively. So that's the first thing. If you want to start executing hook kicks, you need to ensure that you have a decent level of mobility. The hook kick is not effective when thrown to the leg and not effective when thrown to the body. Realistically, you need to be hitting someone on the temple or on the chin with this shot for it to work. So that's going to require you to have very open hips, flexible hamstrings, flexible groin muscles so that you're able to lift your leg and generate enough force through that range of motion. Beyond that, working that whip at the end of the technique is an essential part of what makes the hook kick work. If you simply bring your leg up to touch the target, it's not going to generate much force at all. The most powerful and effective way to throw this kick is often with a spin. You'll also hear this referred to as a wheel kick. The spinning hook kick allows you to generate a huge amount of power through its rotational force. By rotating your entire body into the technique, you're able to put all of your weight behind the shot. Just be aware that it has a tell. There's a lot of motion that comes in before the kick itself actually lands. So it's important to use setups. Throw your hands, throw your feints, use your footwork to put your opponent in a position to land this kick effectively. I've done a video previously on 3 ways to set up and land the spinning kick, so I'll link that in the description box below. Some great examples of fighters who have pulled this technique off are Edson Barboza, Stephen Thompson, and Raymond Daniels. Raymond Daniels in particular has been a great example of how to translate these karate techniques into full contact sports such as K1, Muay Thai, and MMA. So if you haven't checked him out already, I highly recommend giving him a search. But beyond its effectiveness as a technique on its own, I do believe the hook kick can be used effectively as a setup to land other shots. If we go back to its karate and points fighting roots, you'll often see the hook kick combined with a roundhouse kick, so both kicks done whilst maintaining the chamber in the air. Here, the hook kick is being used mostly as a setup to land the roundhouse kick. The idea is for it to provide a distraction, get your eyes and your guard looking and moving one way to then create the opening on the opposite side for you to fire. Now this is a high risk maneuver for you to work, especially if your opponent has the options of taking you down or sweeping you to the floor. But one way we can make this technique safer and more effective is to simply put our foot down in between techniques. So similar to how you'd throw a double roundhouse kick touching the floor down in between, but the first kick we're going to use is going to be that hook kick. Where a lot of these gyms are not practicing a hook kick in terms of throwing it, that also means that they're not practicing how to defend it. This makes this technique extremely unorthodox for a lot of fighters to see. They don't know how to respond to it. They don't have built-in muscle memory of how to deal with it. So even if the kick doesn't land or doesn't land with a great amount of power, there's a good chance that it's going to cause some involuntary responses from your opponent. So here we can throw a hook kick, touch the floor for a moment, and then repeat with the roundhouse kick immediately after. The beauty of this variation now is we can now use that roundhouse kick to either attack the leg, the body, or the head, depending on how our opponent reacts and what opening they provide for us. I've always tried to have a very open-minded approach to both my training and my teaching methodology. I believe that there's a lot that we can learn from different styles of martial arts, and we can bring it together to create an effective style that's personal to ourselves. Am I telling you that you all need to go out and practice your hook kicks? No, not at all. But what I am saying is be open-minded to introducing new techniques into your arsenal, even if it's just as a tool for distraction or misdirection. Take what works for you and discard what doesn't. Guys, I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button so more people can see it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already, and I will see you on the next one.